Hello again, and welcome back to The Broken Past. Before we begin with this video, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you once again for your continued support for the channel. Since the last video, and maybe even a month or so before that, this channel has seemed to grow exponentially, practically doubling in subscriber count in the last few months alone. That blows me away, and I cannot thank you enough for your support. I do try to read and respond to all the comments that I can, but as the channel has grown, there has been a significant increase in the number of comments as well. So while I may not respond to all of them anymore, I do want to let you know that I do still read every one of those, and I appreciate every single comment and feedback that you provide to the channel. Now with that said, let's get back to the video. In this video, I want to address a common response that a lot of you have left in regards to the Gameboy Macro that I've made, both in the Boxy Pixel video as well as in some of the other macro videos. There have been a number of comments that revolve around one thing, and that is this. So you can see here that if you take a Game Boy Advance cartridge and put it into a standard Game Boy Advance form factor, as well as the Game Boy Advance SP, which I actually don't have down here with me right now, it fits nice and flush on the top of the shell and doesn't stick out when you're playing. However, for the Game Boy Macro, or the DS Lite, you stick it in and it leaves this unsightly bump on the bottom of the shell. Now, if you go through the process of making your own Game Boy Macro or buying an aftermarket third-party shell, like this Boxy Pixel faceplate, it's a lot of effort that you put into to make this really cool small form factor product, but you still have this big bump on the bottom, and it just looks unsightly, and it feels like the product is unfinished. Luckily for us, however, there is a solution to the problem, and that is this, the Easy Flash Omega Flash Cart. Before proceeding any further, however, I just want to make it clear that I do not condone illegal use of ROMs or flash cards. So all ROMs that I have on here are of games I already own and have shown in previous videos. Anyway, disclosure aside, the Easy Flash Omega is an awesome device for a number of reasons. Of course, it has your standard features of being able to play Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games. It also has a battery in it for RTC functionality, and can read ROMs off of an inserted micro SD card, or written to its internal NOR memory. But that's not the purpose of this video. I'm not going to go over the features and functionality of the flash card itself. No, the Easy Flash Omega has one hidden feature that makes it awesome for a project like this. So let's start by taking a look at it. So we can see here we have our standard flash cart, sized like a Game Boy Advance. However, when you take it out, you notice a separate faceplate back here. So we'll get to this in just a second. So we can see, just like a Game Boy Advance game, it fits nice and flush into a Game Boy Advance shell, as well as a Game Boy Advance SP and a Game Boy Micro, which I also do not have one of those here to show. But just like with regular Game Boy Advance games, still sticks out with that bump on the bottom. Even worse, if you can see here, it looks even less polished because now there's this big empty shell sticking out the bottom of it. So definitely not the greatest experience as well. However, if we take it back out of the macro, we can see a small set screw right on the underside of it. And what that does is that allows us to replace the faceplate with a much smaller form factor faceplate. So let's go ahead and do that now. It's a pretty simple process of just removing one set screw and taking the front faceplate off. And putting the bottom faceplate on. And then putting the set screw back in. And we'll go ahead and pop in our micro SD card back into here as well. And now you can see that when we use this on a DS Lite or a Game Boy Macro and sit it in there, that it fits nice and flush with the bottom of the shell. So now this is a much more finished looking product than using a full-size Game Boy Advance cartridge. Now it also goes without saying that once you've adapted this to the smaller faceplate, this will no longer fit in a standard Game Boy Advance. It fits in there, but the pins aren't making a connection to the cartridge itself, and therefore it's not going to work. So you need to decide kind of up front where you're planning on putting this most often. If you're okay with the unsightly bump, obviously you can leave that, but if you're looking at this for a finished product for your macro, this is definitely the route you want to go, knowing that you won't be able to use it for other handhelds after you replace the faceplate. So let's go and let's just pop it in here real quick and give it a test. And turn it on. And here we can see all of the games that we have installed on the cartridge. So using the game that we've shown in some of our other videos, let's go ahead and open up Pokemon Sapphire and let's take a look. And there we go. So we have all of our Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color games on a Omega flash cart, but the most important part about it is that it sits flush with the bottom of the shell. So now, no more unsightly bump on the handheld. So overall, obviously this is a much better experience than the cartridges, as well as the advantages of having a cart with all your collection of games on it. So as I've said before, make sure you're following all laws with regards to using ROMs and enjoy it. This is a much better experience, and this is definitely the direction that I go with going forward, not having that bump on the bottom. So anyway, short and sweet video. Thanks again for watching, and I hope this was helpful for those of you who liked the idea but didn't like the idea of the cartridge sticking out the bottom and using this as your primary Game Boy Advance handheld. So that being said, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.